The Wheat School on RealAgriculture.com is brought to you by Bayer Crop Science and C&MC.
I'm Amber Bell, and this is Real Agriculture, here today for an episode of Wheat School with Lara de Moissac and Rosie Shaw, both of Alberta grains, and we're going to be talking about fungicides and different varieties of wheat and how those two things interact. So welcome, girls. Great to see you.
Good to see you. Thanks for having us.
Let's lay down a foundation here. Why is it important, and is there a big difference in varieties when it comes to fungicides and how impactful they are?
Yeah, totally. As you probably already know, fungicides are applied to protect the plants from diseases, and that's where the first factor of variability comes from is your environment. Is it conducive to diseases? If you have a very high yield potential lush crop that has a microclimate under the canopy that's wetter, you are more likely to, your disease risk is a lot higher, and the crop will need more likely to need a fungicide protection. On the other hand, if it's dry and the canopy doesn't close nice and the yield potential is not as high, then there's less of a need for a fungicide protection in that case. Then the second layer of complexity is the varieties themselves. The varieties are not born equal, like everybody has different their genetics are different, so some of them are more likely to be responsive to a fungicide application. They might have a higher yield boost, or you see better results, and some of them, if you put on a fungicide, you see not as good of a yield response, and that brings the question of, should I put a fungicide on? Is it more likely to pay off, etc.? Yeah.
How much variability is there between the varieties?
There's one study I've seen down in Alberta around 2017 for the variety of AC foremost that is susceptible to Fusarium head blight and susceptible to loose mud. They saw a 17% yield difference between the standard management versus the intense or stacked management that contains a fungicide, a PGR, and a higher nitrogen. Then in another common variety, AC Penhold, they only see 11% yield difference between the standard and the stacked management. So every variety could respond differently, and if you do that same trial in a different location, you might see different numbers too.
And are there currently trials ongoing regarding the different varieties and how they respond to fungicides?
There are. Actually, Eastern Canada has been doing it for over a decade. Ontario Cereal Crop Committee, they do variety performance trials each year with and without fungicide. That way they can summarize the data and give farmer side by side each variety with or without fungicide, how the yield potential looking like, and that helps them a lot with which varieties they pick and do they plan to put a fungicide on it. But in Alberta right now, we are still short of this data, so that brings the question back to how do we improve this in Western Canada and specifically Alberta.
With that being said, what is Alberta Grains doing when it comes to research on the different varieties and fungicides?
Yeah, so this year we have launched a pilot project called the Advanced Management Trials, and this year we have the Fungicide by Variety protocol. This new kind of program is co-sponsored by Syngenta and CCAN. They're the major funders this year. And we're looking at 4 wheat and 4 barley varieties at 6 different locations, and they'll be treated and untreated with a fungicide. And it's essentially double blind. No one is going to know what fungicide has been applied, just only whether or not a fungicide has been applied. So we're working with some newer varieties of wheat and some slightly older ones, kind of like a built-in check to the program to look at the response of those varieties to fungicides.
And what are you guys hoping will be an outcome from the trials?
We're hoping that this information provides more insight for farmers on kind of the return on investment of certain varieties, but also more so the response of these varieties to a fungicide and whether that's going to pay for them. This is a new program, and I kind of entered at the late stages of getting it running, but Now that we do have it up and running, I'm looking forward to hearing or to seeing the first year results. We're not sure when they'll be published, but you can look for the results online at the Alberta Grains website.
And is there anywhere or any information that you'd recommend growers go to because trials take a little bit of time. Mm-hmm. So currently, if they're looking at seed selection and knowing they need to, have the most effective fungicide available for their seed, is there anywhere you'd recommend for growers to go to find more information or any agronomic practices that they should be using?
Well, I think the first step, if they're looking for a new variety, would be to check out the Alberta Seed Guide, which contains all of the information for wheat and barley and other cereal crops from those regional variety trials. All of that data is compiled into the Seed Guide for other crops as well. So it's a very handy resource, and I believe most of it is very usable online as well. So that's the first step. Secondly, if they're looking at doing a new variety and they're not really sure, they can further trial on their own farms, even through the Plot to Farm program. They can do a variety comparison trial, and then maybe they've selected that new variety based on that trial, and then after that they could try a fungicide trial as well through the Plot to Farm program. When in doubt, test it out, right? So if they're not sure about the return on investment of a fungicide in their own fields with the varieties that they're already working with, leave a test strip. That'd be my top recommendation. Yeah.
Is there a really big difference in how growers should manage their seed selection or fungicide selection when it comes to the southern versus the northern prairies?
I think it depends on first the genetics. Sometimes if you look for the variety information, they have information on, say, which soil zone or growing region is the variety best suitable at. Another resource you can find is contact your local applied research associations, and if they have regional variety trials on their site, they will be able to best provide the information to you of the most local data on the yield and disease, etc., variety performances, so you have a better idea of how that variety performs in your region and probably in the past few years. And in terms of selecting fungicide, I think it's very weather and condition dependent. I won't necessarily say from up in the Peace all the way to Lethbridge, the fungicide selection differs, or especially in-season fungicide differs by a lot, but it definitely depends on how the condition look like that year. If it's being dry or it's being very wet or somewhere in between, and for that definitely talk to your local agronomist, and they have the best information and potentially supply of the fungicide options in your region. There's one great resource that the growers can try out is the Fusarium head blight risk maps, and it's a new tool. It's prairie-wide, include 3 provinces, and it's an improved model. That means it's more accurate. And please go to prairiefhb.ca and you can see, find your area, find your disease, the disease risk, and then I hope it helps you make decisions.
That's wonderful. Well, thank you guys. And that was Lara de Moissac and Ruoxi Shaw on Real Agriculture.